child educator pushes for corn literacy. That's right, the adult kind, to be mandated and taught to children. Guys, I wish I was making this up. Okay, I really wish I was making this up. And I really went and tried to dig up some research and was seeing if maybe we're getting this out of context or is there something going on, okay? It says child educator says schools should teach kids about corn and parents should unlearn everything they know about sex and gender. Yeah. Yep. This is a real video. All right. So check this out.
Corn lit a requirement.
Make corn lit a requirement. Make corn lit a requirement.
But if you're asking what would I like to see done, I'd like to see literacy be embedded and integrated in school environments.
So that made no sense. Oh, no.
She wants pornography to be integrated into school environments.
In middle school and high school.
Middle school, and do you understand that there's like 11-year-olds in middle school? What? These kids are entering puberty. Their hormones are raging, and you want to introduce corn?
Darkness.
I would like to see parents unlearning all of the things that they have, been conditioned to believe around gender and sexuality.
This is a sickness.
This is the epitome of brain rot, ladies and gentlemen. This is the epitome of brain rot. But these people exist, okay? These people exist. Now, I'm not, for those of you guys that are like, Ruslan, why the culture war? Why make videos like this? This is why. Because when we don't talk about these things, then the line gets pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And before you know it, we have women getting their scholarships taken. We have men setting women's records in swimming. We have men wrestling women. This is what happens when you don't say anything. And so I think the only way to prevent stuff like this from coming to your local public school is by exposing this sickness, is by addressing the sickness. And I don't think that's happening as a society, as a whole, this reaction to it, because people have had enough. People have had enough. They're like, look, man, we were polite, we were kind, we were meek, we were quiet, but enough is enough. And that's what's happening right now.
And bodies and agency so that they can disrupt and be the generation of parents that creates and cultivates healthy, fully formed, fulfilled sexuality for their young people. And then those young people are getting sex ed so that they become, parents or the older generation of leaders that are continuing that sex positivity. But that's a huge cultural shift.
And sex positivity, if you guys don't know what sex positivity is a byproduct of the sexual revolution where you are just viewing sex in the strictly material sense, okay? Where it's just two people getting it on for the sake of pleasure and exploration. Now, the issue with this is even when I sat down on the Whatever podcast with Adam 22 and his wife, I asked them, do you think there's something spiritual about it? And they conceded that there is. Now, Adam is an atheist, a staunch atheist with an upside-down cross, and he conceded there's something spiritual about it. So when you reduce sex to just the material exploration and pleasure aspect, you're removing the fact that there is something spiritual happening in the act that I think is engineered in a very specific way, right? And that's why all of this is so perverse. And so she's trying to push, and we're going to get into specifically what is sex positivity here in a second, but she's trying to push this stuff.
And that's a big ask.
Lit a requirement?
Now, important note, this is my guy MTR. MTR is not a Christian. MTR is not overt about any specific faith. He's a theist, right? But MTR has enough sense to come down hard on this and expose it for what it is. So shout out to MTR.
You have absolutely got to be kidding me. If it was a man suggesting this, he'd be labeled a predator. So my question is, why doesn't she get the same energy?
So
Question is, why doesn't she get the same energy? Now, let's look at what this is. Okay. New York Times blasted for defending pornography literacy for first grade. These people are sick. It's the New York Times. So let's do a little bit of research here. So just, you know, I don't want to straw man any of these folks, right? I want to let them define their own terms and let them be accurately represented. Concerned parents and media critics swatted the New York Times. This is happening in the New York Times, by the way. So this isn't in some obscure highways and byways and fringe pockets of, you know, folks with purple hair that are trans-abled, trans-disabled. Like, this isn't that. This is New York Times, this is mainstream stuff, okay? Thursday, after the newspaper heralded Justine Ang Fonte, a New York teacher who recently became infamous for her sexual education curriculum for children and young adults as a sex-positive educator, and called her lessons pornography literacy. For 7 years, Fonte was the director of health and wellness at the Dalton School on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. In May, she was invited to teach 2 Zoom lessons on pornography, literacy, and consent to juniors and seniors at the Columbia Grammar and Preparatory School. This is at a prep school on the Upper West Side. In the Upper West Side, these folks are, if you know anything about the Upper West Side, this is some of the most wealthiest people in the country that can afford to send their kids here, that can afford to live in this zip code. Okay, this is craziness. Okay, those lessons reportedly included some massive images, outraging parents, and eventually leading to her resignation. But the Times had a different viewpoint. Of course they did. The Times had a different viewpoint on the controversy and appeared to provide Fonte some backup. Pornography literacy classes are supposed to teach students how to critically assess what they see on the screen, the Times tweeted, with the links to its report from style reporter Valerio Sofrofanov. But when a sex-positive educator taught her curriculum at 2 elite New York City schools recently, some parents were outraged because they're waking up. They're waking up. By the way, same parents that probably voted in some of this lunacy. Some of the same parents that were so open-minded and so affirming, and now their brains are falling out. You're so open-minded that your brain has fallen out, and this is what you get. This is what the elites get. You get this. You get to send your kids to schools, to prep schools in the Upper West Side where they're taught this nonsense, and the New York Times is co-signing it. This is what you get. Pornography literacy classes are supposed to teach students how to critically assess what they see on the screen, but a sex-positive educator taught her curriculum to elites. So that's the New York Times tweeting it. The Zoom lessons never used the term, according to Fonte. Instead, Saravana notes the lesson was about private parts being private and included a cartoon in which 2 characters anatomically correct names for their genitals and say that sometimes it feels good to touch them. It's okay to touch yourself and see how different body parts feel, but it's best to only do it in private. Hold on. It's best. This is being taught to middle school kids and all the way down to 1st grade. It's best to only do it in public. No. It's, first of all, I think you're struggling to justify that touching yourself at all is good in terms of the lack of conservation of said energy, okay, and delaying gratification. And then 2, to say it's best to only do it in private would imply that it's not awful to do it in public. It's just best to do. You know, like, it's best to eat chicken and broccoli, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world, right? It's not the end of the world. What are we doing, right? It's best to do it only in private, the narrator tells viewers. But the video reportedly outraged parents, as it should have, to the point that Dalton parents bombarded the school with more complaints about Fonte's curriculum. According to the New York Post, Fonte would later resign from Dalton, with the school reportedly having no ill will towards her. So the school didn't have any issues with this. New York Times don't got no issues with this. Throughout her tenure at Dalton, Justine Ang Fonte has helped to develop an exemplary K-12 health and wellness program. Dalton, our faculty, staff, administration, and trustees continue to stand firmly behind this program and those who teach it. Dalton's head of school, Jim Best, who also won't be returning, said in a statement. Darkness. The Times acknowledged that Fonte has received backlash for her lessons, but noted that multiple sex educators interviewed for this article said there was nothing inappropriate about her classes and that her methods appeared to be in line with the national sex education standards and the CDC guidelines. See, this kind of stuff, when you drop that line in there, national sex education standards, and see, this is why institutions deplete and the public loses trust. When the CDC guidelines allegedly the CDC guidelines are aligned with, I would hope not. You start losing hope in the institutions, right? And I mean, look at the FDA. Like, folks have already lost hope in the FDA. Now you got the CDC. And these things are supposed to be safeguards, and they're not. They're completely falling apart. Like, they're completely falling apart. And this is going to have consequences, because now if we can't trust the CDC, we can't trust any of these institutions anymore, because they're pushing complete nonsense. It's like who was it that came out with the new chart for food and said that certain cereals are better for you than beef, right? Like, that's what this is. Like, now people are going to be hesitant to listen to anything you guys have to say. Pornography literacy teaches how to recognize what is realistic and what is not, how to deconstruct implicit gender roles, and how to identify what types of behavior could be a healthy risk or safety risk. Critics condemn the New York Times for pushing what they believe to be premature and dangerous message to children. I'm not sure how this is even a thing, the literacy of something that's freaking outlawed to children. How is this even a thing? Explain that to me, Mr. Sex Positive, Mrs. Sex Positive. It's like me saying we need to do literacy about what methamphetamine is to children, because methamphetamine is out there. No. We're going to say, don't consume methamphetamine. Don't consume fentanyl. Don't do it. And best believe that pornography is the fentanyl of media. It will absolutely do damage on your spirit, on your soul. It will jack you up, and it'll set you up to do all kinds of stuff, especially for young boys. I'm telling you, as one that was exposed to corn at a very young age, I'm telling you, you don't need to educate. You don't need to create literacy for fentanyl. Just tell people, stay away from it. Don't do drugs, kids. Don't do it. Is not sex positive. Said, okay, so this is shout out to Lila Rose. Corn is not sex positive. That's like saying rat poison is a vitamin. Corn is dehumanizing and everyone involved and damaging to healthy sexuality. Also, instructing 5-year-olds about is sexual abuse, and any adult involved should be criminally charged. Shout out to Lila Rose, the voice of sanity in the room. This is craziness, man. This is craziness. But this is as the world is getting darker. As the world is getting darker, this is why it is essential for followers of Jesus to have your house in order, to have your personal devotion in order, to have your life in order. Why? Because it only takes a little bit of light to shine very bright in a very dark environment. And I want that to be us. So shout out to Lila. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when he answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.